Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. And today, we've got a bit of a combination episode for you here. We had a bit of technical issue earlier this week when we had the opportunity to discuss the Vikings loss to the Dallas Cowboys. But we still want to cover some ground on that because, that wasn't great.
There's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some thoughts. So we're going to spend a portion of this episode breaking that down and kind of sharing our standpoint on that game. And then we'll finish up like we typically would for a Thursday episode with a preview of the upcoming matchup. And that this week is the Carolina Panthers. And then we'll finish up with our picks. So that's kind of the game plan for today. Should be a fun one. So let's get right to it here. Starting back with the Dallas Cowboys game that the Vikings lost by a final score of 31-28, as I'm sure you guys are all well aware at this point. I don't need to break down the intricacies of the game for you, since I'm sure you've been thinking about it all week. And the reason why you've been thinking about it is because, in my opinion, and I'm going to start with this right here, I think that game signaled the end of the Vikings season. That was the day the Vikings died, right? And we just spent about a month talking, being optimistic, getting excited about this team.
Talking ourselves back into a chance, yeah.
And immediately, once both Drew and I got on board saying this is going to be a 2-score win by the Vikings based off how they're playing and how terrible, Dallas has been and how, washed Andy Dalton looks, they go down the field and they put up 31 points on this defense. And, of course, we have to talk about Kirk Cousins, who played 98% of this game to perfection. Some of the best throws you will ever see from the quarterback position were made during this game. But ultimately, when it came down to it, and we have to talk about it, the Vikings lost.
And that's going to be on him, or at least he's receiving a lot of the blame for that. And there's a bunch of different angles to go with this, right? Kirk Cousins played arguably the game of his career as a Viking, really. I believe going into that final drive, he had like 3 complete passes and 2 of them were throwaways.
He was
something like that.
23 at one point.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what the line that I'm thinking of. It might have been, he ended up 22 for 30. I don't know what it was, but he was extremely efficient throwing the ball throughout the game. And like you said, accurate all over the field, the dimes to Jefferson down the field, both on that fade route down the left sideline. And then you had the touchdown throw to him. You had Thielen multiple times on perfectly accurate balls. He was also moving around a lot. He was creating plays with his feet, which is not Kirk Cousins-esque. So a phenomenal game by Kirk Cousins. And then, of course, the crunch time drive that stalled, partly because Justin Jefferson dropped that crossing route. Absolutely. That would have netted probably 15 yards had he caught it, turned upfield. I'm never going to be one to blame just one player or focus the blame on one player, no matter what happens. But I think in this scenario, it's tough to really look at Kirk Cousins and say, okay, you're at fault for this game. Now, at the same time, this is the difference between Kirk Cousins and an elite quarterback. And no, I don't want to compare Cousins and like Patrick Mahomes, for example, right? That's unfair. But with the Vikings game and Kirk Cousins, and then the Chiefs also, they both got the ball in the same scenario, right? It was a 31-28 game and got the ball in their own territory, limited timeouts, limited time left, right? And with Cousins, you didn't really expect much to happen. You were hoping for the field goal maybe, right? Hoping for the field goal, extend it to overtime and win the game there. And then you watch the Chiefs game against the Raiders Sunday night, and you kind of get a way different feeling. You're kind of thinking, well, let's see how they walk down the field and win this game in regulation. And that is the difference to me between these two guys. And we're never going to have, Kirk Cousins is never going to be in that elite stratosphere. I don't think we're ever going to put him there. But that's just, the problem with that is people, with the contract and the money he's being paid, a lot of people say, okay, your quarterback should be able to do a Mahomes type thing there in that scenario. And repeatedly, Cousins does not. And so that's where the problem lies for a lot of people with Cousins. It's not about, what he did in this game, for 58 minutes or whatever. It's that last 2 minutes where the star elite quarterbacks, time and time again come through. And even when you expect them to in a tough scenario, Cousins has repeatedly not done so. And so there's just that dichotomy there. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And I think, whether you like it or not, he's the Vikings quarterback for the next few years here. And that's just the expectation that the Vikings are going to have in those crunch time scenarios.
So when you think about what a good quarterback looks like, right? There's different levels to being a good quarterback, right? Like,
Yeah.
we talk about top 15, top 10, top 5, whatever. But in terms of like actual production, right? The first thing you're looking for is that he can execute the system, right? Go down the field, bring in the play calls, get the guys around him, throw good passes, have awareness in the pocket, all that stuff, right? That's what gets you into like the top 15. To get into the top 10, you got to start covering up issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's your receivers like Aaron Rodgers making Marquez Valdez-Scantling look good, or that's Patrick Mahomes last year making a non-existent running game look like not even a problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got to find that's what gets you into that next level, right? That all-pro tier is by being able to do that. And finally, if you're able to not only cover up issues, not only execute your system, but make everyone around you a better player than they actually should be, then you're probably a top 3, top 4, top 5 quarterback. There aren't many guys on the planet that are able to do that. So when you look at Kirk Cousins, the expectation is you see the dollar sign, right? You see that $84 million tag, and you say that guy's getting paid the same amount of money as this guy right here. And they're both good, but one guy is here, one guy is here. Kirk Cousins is never going to, well, I don't want to say never because there are glimpses, but he's probably never going to be a guy that covers up other people's mistakes. This game was kind of a great this is Kirk Cousins in a nutshell. He played fantastic. Top 5 quarterback, great throughout the game. He made all the throws, every single level, whether it was the short pass, intermediate, or deep. Every single one of them was on point. He dropped 2 or 3 in the bucket. And granted, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson made him look good a couple times, but that's kind of the relationship between a quarterback and a receiver. You give one, you give some, you take a little, whatever it may be, and eventually you try to come to, a positive result. And I think that Kirk Cousins did that for 98% of this game. Now, the fumble early in the game, we can talk about that, whatever. I mean, it was a dumb fumble. It was a fumble that a professional should not let go of.
Also a fumble that probably should not have been counted given the head-to-head contact on the play, but that's probably another discussion.
Right, but ultimately you look at that happened, right? Like there's no, you can't just hit the rewind button and not allow that pay. Yeah. It happened. He responded extremely well, which is something he doesn't do, by the way. So you look at all of these pieces here, and then it comes down to that one spot, right? You get 3. You're going to get 4 downs here. You're going to get 10 yards to get another 4 set of downs. And yes, we can point to Justin Jefferson and we can say, look, you dropped an easy first down. It's a mistake. That drive is on you. We can say that. That's okay. But Kirk Cousins had 3 other downs to work with. Now, if you think of top 15, top 10, top 5, and kind of that level, those levels that I just, discussed, Cousins was doing his job on that drive, right? He did everything within his power to do his job effectively. But he didn't cover up anyone's mistakes. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the difference between what's going to give you a winning quarterback, a guy that's going to get you 9-10 games like he did last year, or a guy who's literally going to take you to where you need to go regardless of circumstance, like Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. There just aren't that many guys like that. And I think we can fairly, conclusively decide that Cousins is never going to be that guy. And that's okay. But
it's just the problem people have then is, the problem people have is the contract that goes along with Kirk. Like, he is one of those guys, and it's just, that's the issue. And so you mentioned covering up issues, right? I brought up the Mahomes game Sunday night against the Raiders because the Chiefs had very similar problems that the Vikings did against the Cowboys, where the defense could not stop anything, right? Like Derek Carr and the Raiders offense marched down the field against the Chiefs the whole game, scoring points, responding at every chance they got. In a way, I think it wasn't quite as in a dominant fashion because the Cowboys benefited from like field position and special teams miscues, but Cowboys did it the same way where they just kind of scored, basically every time they got the ball. And it was up to Kirk to respond, no matter how much time is left, how much, whatever the case may be. And so he had, Patrick Mahomes covered up the defensive issues. He covered up the fact that offensive linemen were hurt. He covered up the fact that a couple of his top receivers were hurt. And, they ended up winning the game. And there wasn't really a doubt either that they would win the game. And, once the Cowboys scored that last touchdown with a minute and a half left, it seemed like the writing was on the wall for this game. And so there's just that significant difference. I think that's the one big discussion piece that there is from this game is Kirk Cousins, and of course it's going to be Kirk Cousins in every game. But like
It's always the quarterback.
This offense is so efficient and so elite that it really is. It's frustrating that they're 4-6 because the efficiency at which they move the ball, given the fact that their offense is so old school and run first, even though how efficient they are in passing the ball. And there's so many issues that can be corrected. They're still among the best offenses in the NFL, and they're still 4-6. And they're still finding a way to lose to the Dallas Cowboys at home. It's frustrating, and it's not all on Kirk. It's not, but that's that elite quarterback discrepancy. That an elite quarterback will go down there and get you a field goal and send that to overtime at the very least. Kirk didn't do that.
So ultimately, this really comes down to a situation where you get to play. I mean, as a fan, you have a right to place blame wherever the hell you want, right? Who cares what anyone else says, right? If you want to say Kirk Cousins is wholly at fault, you go ahead and do that. You might not be totally right, but you go ahead and do that. Like you're allowed to do that.
It's your perspective, right? Like,
absolutely.
And I could see somebody coming to that conclusion by thinking, well, the reason the Vikings don't have a good defense or don't have a good offensive line is because of Kirk's contract. Yeah. So it's all his fault.
You can get there in a number of ways. Yeah. It's there, right? But
it's there.
The issue that I have here is that I guess this is a matter of your expectation versus what is reality. I feel like, and granted, this isn't always fair, I'm pretty grounded in the reality of what these players are to this Vikings team. And that's why I'm so critical of Kirk Cousins, and people say to me, he just had a great game. What are you yelling about? Well, it's because that game is like, it's not always, that's not who Kirk Cousins is. Kirk Cousins is the guy you saw against Dallas. He played exceedingly well. So good. But then when the moment came, it didn't get done. And yes, that's not his fault. I am not personally saying that final drive is on Kirk Cousins, but the Vikings lost the game. Kirk Cousins is the face of the franchise. You have to take some share of the blame there. You have to, because there was 3 other downs, and those 3 other plays sucked. They were terrible. They were going backwards, and if they weren't going backwards, they were throwing the ball up into God knows what territory. And that was on Kirk Cousins. Jefferson, yeah, that's a problem. He dropped it, but I'll bet you he never does it again. I will bet you that Kirk Cousins will fail in that situation again, though. That's where we're at. And to me, kind of to finalize this section of the show, the Vikings moved to 4-6, and you're right. I agree. It's very frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating, not just for the efficiency, but also because they should have won 3 games now. They should be 7-3.
So that's the thing, right? And see, the other argument is, well, Kirk has, in 3 games this year, he's thrown a go-ahead fourth quarter touchdown pass, and they've lost all 3 of them.
And so that's who else do you blame but Kirk? Because he had the opportunity 3 straight times. And yes, you can blame the defense. That means you can blame Mike Zimmer. And I encourage you to, because that defensive performance against Dallas was atrocious, especially considering what we know about what this team has been all season long. The offense, top to bottom, phenomenal. A+ is down the board. I give Kirk Cousins an A- because I'm gonna knock him just because he's the quarterback of the team that lost. But everyone else, great. Dalvin Cook not at the most efficient performance, whatever. Adam Thielen, sensational, probably one of the best catches I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, if your defense can't get it done when everyone's clicking on offense, it's not just a Kirk Cousins issue, and I will give you that. But ultimately, he had the chance. And all you can ask for in the NFL or any professional sport is the opportunity. And when you get the opportunity, you either live or you die with it. And I'm dying with Kirk Cousins because he's had that opportunity 3 times and failed. And now, to me, 4-6 isn't going to – you can't really claw your way back from that with the way that Arizona, Seattle, Los Angeles, etc. is playing. I don't think the Vikings get the opportunity that they had last week.
Yeah, it's going to take – we'll discuss this in future shows, but basically it's going to take a 5-1 finish, which is extremely unlikely in itself for the Vikings, right, given that they just lost to Dallas at home. I mean, finishing 5-1 against any string of opponents would be difficult, given that. But also, then they need Arizona to finish 3-3 and a few other things to go their way. So, more or less, it's not looking good. And so, but with that said, we can still transition to the Carolina game here. Look ahead to
there is an opportunity.
There is,
I'm confident in it.
If there was fans in the stands, this would be a really, really fun game because of the Teddy Bridgewater return. as a starting quarterback to Minnesota that would have been a great treat to be in attendance for. Now it doesn't look like, well, A, Teddy may or may not play given injury. He's got an MCL issue, but also B, the fans aren't going to be there. And we also don't get to see Christian McCaffrey probably. So we get to see prison Mike Davis in there. It's a different Carolina team, but they dominated Detroit last week.
Yeah. So this game's interesting because part of the reason why we blend these shows, right, is because, I mean, the result of this Dallas football game immediately changes the dynamic of this game right here, right? If the Vikings are 5-5 right now, and they had been able to go down the field and get a touchdown on that final drive, or not allow the touchdown at the late stage of the game, whatever route you want to go. If they hadn't done that, you head into this game 5-5. Arizona is one game in front of you. This is why I'm so pissed, right? One game in front of you. Green Bay also lost, so that means that you've got them in front of you by 2 games and an opportunity to get back into it in the NFC North because they all have to play each other still. So you have all these things happen, and one of the things that didn't happen is Carolina didn't lose. So now you have this big opportunity this week if you're 5-5 to essentially knock Carolina out of contention because they're in a similar position to Minnesota right now where they need this win as bad as anyone. But now I don't care about 5-6. Then you have to get to 6-6 against Jacksonville, and then we just get to get shot down again against Tampa Bay or New Orleans. I'm not excited about this the same way that I used to be, and it's a direct result of what happened against Dallas because I just saw a set for a lot of their roster, a second-team offense and defense beat the Vikings against their offensive best. That was the best the Vikings could do offensively most games, right, in terms of efficiency. And now they have to do this against, Mike Davis isn't bad. He's by no means, what I thought Andy Dalton was to Dak in comparison to Christian McCaffrey. He's going to get yards, and he's going to play well. And I don't care if it's Teddy or P.J. Walker either because I think they're very similar styled quarterbacks. And, yes, I do think that Teddy Bridgewater is one of, a lot better and probably more consistent because he has more time playing the sport at a professional level. But P.J. Walker looked really good. So I'm scared of that too. And he probably moves better than Bridgewater does at this point in his career. So this might be a disaster for the Vikings once again. Mm-hmm. So, again,
the Carolina offense has weapons, man.
They do.
Even without Teddy, even without McCaffrey, like you have that receiving core. You have Robbie Anderson. You have DJ Moore. You have Curtis Samuel, who has kind of turned into their gadget player type version
Cordell
of
Patterson.
Percy Harvin is what I thought of.
Yeah.
The guy who will line up in the slot, he'll line up wide, he'll line up in the backfield and take handoffs. He'll do all of those things for Carolina. So this offense presents challenges. And for a team that looked putrid, against Dallas, right? How about that Chris Jones, I think, tackle attempt on the Pollard touchdown run?
Right.
Worst thing I've ever seen, right? You could go down the line. Really, anyone outside of Eric Kendricks, you could say played a poor game for the Vikings defense. And so
that includes Harrison Smith, who looked awful, by the way, last week.
He guessed wrong a couple times, and it really hurt. So also the flag on that hit was also kind of dumb, but that's beside the point. So I think the Panthers offense this week presents a tougher challenge than the Cowboys offense just did, despite I think both teams have a lot of playmakers, right? The receiving cores are both really good. And I think, I trust, Mike, like you said, Mike Davis is pretty good. And whether it's Teddy, whether it's PJ Walker, this Panthers offense can play. And so I'm concerned about the Vikings defense in this one. And it's weird because going into the Cowboys game, they were gaining momentum. They had shut down a couple of teams pretty well. And then you let Andy Dalton kind of do more or less what he wanted. Granted, the field position battle sucked, but let Andy Dalton kind of get what he wanted. And now you got, another highly skilled group of playmakers coming into town.
Absolutely. Right. And you think about kind of the issues that were presented by Dallas last week, right? We talked all about the 3 wide receivers that can all make a difference in that game. And I think Michael Gallup was really the only one that wasn't much of a factor. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb comes up with the biggest catches, but you're right. This is a similar situation here where you got 3 competent wide receivers. And what makes me most nervous about Carolina specifically is the fact that all 3 of those guys that you just listed, Moore, Anderson, and Samuel, are among the best in the league at being deep threats in
Mhm.
terms of catching the ball downfield and making it really hurt. Those three guys are, next to Tyreek Hill, really. That's it about in terms of 30-plus yard completions, which is, that's a great way to beat the Vikings
Could
right
also
now.
throw like Justin Jefferson in that conversation as well. I mean, for 20-yard receptions and 30-yard receptions, yeah.
Yeah. My point being, though, is that I think that this is an offense that is more difficult to keep up with than people give it credit for, even with McCaffrey out of the game. So you look at kind of this game as a whole, right? What does this game mean? What do the Vikings have to do? What opportunities do they have, and what disadvantages do they have? This is the last chance, and that's the name of this episode, by the way, because this is the last opportunity for this football team in Minnesota. If you lose one more game, it's basically over. And if you lose two more, it is officially over. So you've got a little wiggle room.
And this is understanding that there
don't.
is 2 games at Tampa, at New Orleans on the schedule. So, like,
Right.
it's already probably over anyway because of that. But this is we're hanging on for dear life here. We're on life support.
Right.
And this is a game that is an absolute must-win. These are all must-wins at this point. When you go 1-5 to start the season, you're in must-win territory no matter what the rest of the year.
Right.
But you got a Carolina game at home. This is another one of those, like, probably should win games because their defense isn't very good.
Right.
But though that should win type of philosophy mentality doesn't really seem to work against the with this Vikings team. They lose a lot of games that they should win, and they also have won games that they should not win. So football's weird. The Vikings are weird. I don't really know what to expect. I really don't know what to expect this weekend. I seriously have no idea because this team has given me any range of outcomes that you can expect from a team. So do you have any ideas?
I mean, so you're right. I mean, football it's like this every Sunday, by the way. We pretend it's not. We pretend we can predict what's going to happen. And
true.
Really we can't. But it is an any given Sunday thing. And really the sooner you learn that in your football fandom, the better off you'll probably be, because really, I mean, anyone could beat anyone.
It applies to any team besides the Jets, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. But these are professionals, right? And the Vikings, regardless of if it's Teddy Bridgewater or P.J. Walker, I think both quarterbacks present similar issues. I don't want to focus too much on that position specifically because we are recording on Tuesday ahead of the Thanksgiving holiday here. So we're not sure which one is going to be the starting quarterback this week. But that being said, Bridgewater and Walker, mobile quarterbacks. Everyone here that's listening to this show is familiar with Teddy Bridgewater. I don't need to break down his strengths and weaknesses. You guys know that. And Walker's a lot of the same thing, except for he's a little bit more adept throwing the ball downfield. So really, I'm more concerned with Walker being the starting quarterback. If I'm picking for Mike Zimmer, I want to play Teddy Bridgewater because I know Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know P.J. Walker. So that's something to keep in mind here as we get throughout the week here. If it is Walker, I think he really does give Carolina a better advantage in this specific week than Teddy Bridgewater could. Now, with that being said, it doesn't really matter who's throwing the ball as long as these guys are catching it, right? And they do have the pieces that we went through, but there are also some very big weaknesses in terms of just offensive efficiency with this team, right? They don't have the most productive offensive line. They do have major holes. They don't have the most adept route runners in the league, though I will give DJ Moore some credit because I think he's gotten very good at running that up and out. It's about as dangerous as he can be. But Robbie Anderson is basically a vertical guy and, kind of a screen guy. He's a two-trick pony, in my opinion. So you can slow him down if you're smart enough, in theory, by scheming away from just scheming Robbie Anderson out of the game. I think you can do that. Curtis Samuel is next to impossible to prepare for. You don't even know what you're going to get. It's like you said, it's like preparing for Percy Harvin because he could line up in the backfield and he can line up in the slot or out wide. It doesn't matter. To me, the difference in this game is how you control DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel, because you're going to get some production from Mike Davis, but it's not going to be, in the form of a 60-yard breakaway touchdown. He's more of like a churn and burn kind of guy where you're going to get 3, 4, 5 yards per carry consistently throughout the game. And he'll probably finish with like a 3.9 yards per carry average and a touchdown. He's not going to be the guy who decides this game. To me, it's going to be this offense and how they deal, because let's be real here. The Vikings really lost last week, like truly because of their defense. If the defense allows the 20 points, the Vikings win, right? They would. And, I understand that Kirk Cousins had the chance But if the Vikings defense didn't allow that last touchdown, or didn't allow the touchdown before that, or
the touchdown before that,
or the touchdown before that, I mean, we could do this. We could play if then whatever. But ultimately, to me, the defense is the biggest issue for the Vikings right now, and I think Carolina has the playmakers to make it hurt, even without McCaffrey in the lineup. Now, you flip over to the defensive side, which was what you were talking about. They're very weak defensively. They have, and granted, this last week would kind of be an outlier, but they're, in terms of pressuring the quarterback, they've been awful all season long. I know they were able to get after Matt Stafford last week, but generally, this is a terrible pressure team. The Vikings should have plenty of time to maneuver the football. So just like last week, the Vikings have a significant advantage over Carolina's defense and a significant disadvantage over Carolina's offense because of the way this – I mean, and this is really what this Vikings team is, right? That's pretty much the situation they're going to face.
I think we're in for a shootout. And I'm just taking a glance over at
what's a shootout? What qualifies as a shootout? Was 31-28 a shootout?
See, the thing about it is the Vikings are so methodical with their drives, and they take so much time and they run the ball so much that a shootout for the Vikings is like a bunch of 8-minute scoring drives, right. And so that might be in a game like this Cowboys game where they had 28 points. But I was taking a quick glance over at the total and the gambling, the spread and whatnot. 48.5 is the total. I'm taking that over easily. I think this is going to be a shootout because the Panthers are, they do make those big explosive plays. You got the explosive receivers. Yeah, I think you have a quarterback in Walker who, if he's the starter, will take more shots down the field. But then the Vikings also, they haven't had the problem moving the ball at all in the last 4 weeks. Since the bye week. It's been Dalvin has been churning out, 4 to 5 yards a carry. Kirk has been extremely efficient using the play action pass. So I think this will be a lot. There will be a lot of points scored. Neither defense is that good. And for what it's worth, the Panthers are 31st in the league on third down defense. They are 24th against the run and 20th against the pass. So not a great defense on Carolina's side of the ball. And that is including a shutout last week against Detroit. So before that, I mean, look at their point totals, what they've been giving up. 46, 33. Right. I mean, before that, they got 46 at Tampa Bay, and then 33, 25, 27, 23. So, and then they had a couple other 30-plus point, games earlier in the season. So, defenses gives up points. Vikings are good at scoring points and doing so efficiently. I think there'll be a lot of points scored in this game. It's going to be about really which quarterback does the most with kind of their last couple chances in that fourth quarter. And, of course, as we know with Kirk Cousins, that might not be the best bet for the Vikings.
Right. So, in the spirit of kind of pressing through here, as far as the defense goes, like, you're right. Like, those numbers, those objective figures tell the whole story, right? This isn't a very good defense. In terms of guys that can still make it hurt, Kirk Cousins has a way of finding them, doesn't he? There's 3 guys to me, one at each level, that stand out. Brian Burns, who's a second-year player, high draft pick last year, coming off of the edge. He had 2 sacks last week. He flashed potential last year as well. I think that, in a couple of weeks from now, if he has, getting closer to 8, 9, 10 sacks, we may look at last week's performance against Detroit as kind of the moment where he sort of turned it on and took it to the next level and became a more consistent player. So I would keep an eye on Brian Burns, specifically coming off of the edge. He's a dangerous pass rusher, and I think he has the potential to screw up what Kirk Cousins likes to do, and that's stand like a stone in the backfield and throw deep to Jefferson and Thielen. So keep an eye on him. The second piece is Shaq Thompson, who's the weak side linebacker on this team. If you've been following my sports coverage since like 2014, you know that I love Shaq Thompson and that he was one of my absolute favorite prospects that I've ever had the opportunity to look at. And I really wanted him for the Vikings. And part of that is because I didn't know that Eric Kendricks existed. And part of that is that I thought that Thompson would be a better version of what Eric Kendricks is, and he hasn't been. He's still a very good player, but the ball skills is what stood out to me at Washington, and I think they still exist now in Carolina. And he's a very good mid-level defender that can cover both running backs and tight ends, which you don't really see from a ton of linebackers in the professional rank right now. I think that he is if you think of Eric Kendricks as Coca-Cola soda, I would consider Shaq Thompson to be like an RC Cola version because you're getting the same type of skills. It's just not the same. Eric Kendricks is going to make crazy plays consistently. Shaq Thompson might flub one here or there. That's kind of what I see, but I would keep an eye on him. And then the final one is that cornerback on the left side, Dante Jackson. He's dangerous because he has great ball skills. He also gets beat and he likes to gamble. So to me, that's a coin flip with Kirk Cousins because if you're going to attack him, which I'm sure he will because
reminds me of another Jackson, Eddie Jackson in Chicago, who has gotten the better of Kirk a couple times.
Right. So I would keep an eye on those three guys. I think really to me, if they don't get anything or very little from those three playmakers, it's difficult for this Carolina defense to do anything. Like, because those are really the three guys that I'm concerned about. And, I suppose we'll see how Mike Zimmer, or excuse me, I guess Gary Kubiak tries to neutralize those threats. I think Burns is probably the easiest to neutralize because you have to feel pretty confident with the left side of your offensive line right now. Or I guess it would be technically it would be the right side, which I'm even more confident in. So point stance. I think that the biggest issue to me is Dante Jackson. I'm most concerned about him because he might get burned all night long, and then it might come up with the big play at the end because he has the propensity to do so. So those are my three guys to keep an eye on. Any final thoughts on this Carolina team? What could sink or save the Vikings ship here in this game before we go into our picks?
I just think it's going to be about the Vikings defense. Are we going to see the defense that showed up the 3 weeks prior to the Cowboys game, or are we going to see, the defense that is basically nothing without Eric Kendricks out there and the one that gave absolutely zero effort to try and tackle Tony Pollard on the touchdown run, stuff like that. So that's what I'll be looking to see, and I'm sure Mike Zimmer will hopefully kind of light a fire under them a little bit and bring it back. So even despite the Panthers allowing nothing against the Lions last week, I'm very confident that the Vikings offense will be able to move the ball and put up some scoring drives. It's just, can the Vikings defense get enough stops against Carolina's offense?
All fair points. Let's make our picks here then. So all that being said, we know where the Vikings stand. We know how important this game is for a variety of reasons, right? If you're in the conversation that thinks top 10 draft pick, you probably want the Vikings to lose this game. If you're on the flip side and still believe, which I'm sure there are a couple of you out there, you still want to win this football game and have an opportunity to move to 6-6 next week against Jacksonville, who's also struggling. I think that it's pretty clear here that the weaknesses for both these teams are very similar. And I think, you have to feel confident the Vikings have the better group of playmakers, or at least the more established group of playmakers. Mm-hmm. But is that enough? Can the Vikings get it done here against Carolina at home the way we thought they would 2 weeks ago?
I will pick the Vikings very reluctantly. Football's weird. It's impossible to have a pulse on this team right now. You just don't know which version is going to show up. But with that said, I'll take the Vikings, and most of that is I just think that the defense is bound to rebound after last week.
Yeah, I'm going to take Minnesota as well. I just think they're the better. I think they're the better team. A lot changed for me in terms of my overall perspective of the season last week, but I can't deny that the Vikings are still pretty damn good offensively and, generally speaking, pretty competent defensively. I think that's all it's going to take this week. This is not an elite football team, especially, without McCaffrey, I believe for sure. I think he's been ruled out. And probably not. And, you can say the same could be said about Teddy Bridgewater as well. You're playing backups. You should win. And the Vikings are good enough to do so, so I'm going to pick them to do so. Although, again, after last week, I'm not saying –
I will say –
I'm not betting on the Vikings.
It seems as if the Vikings are destined to win 8 games every even year, right? Yeah. Like 2016, 8-8. A bunch of things had to go wrong for that 5-0 start to not, result in more than 8 wins. 2018, another season where so many things went wrong and your roster is absolutely loaded with talent. You win 8 games. And then it seems like 2020 is kind of something similar is going on here where, a lot of these games are coming down to the wire and they are just finding ways to lose them. And, what should be probably a 6-5 record right now, or 6-4 record right now, given how close some of these games have been. They've just found ways to lose them. They're not winning those games. So that it seems to me like 8-8 is kind of destined to happen this year, which probably is not enough for a playoff spot.
I mean, if you look at the remaining schedule, I see 8-8 or 7-9. So. Anyways, let's fly through the rest of our picks here and get you guys off to the rest. Well, I guess since you're probably listening to this on Thanksgiving, get you back to your Thanksgiving holiday and fighting with your family about politics. So I know you want to do that, so let's get through these picks here as quickly as possible. Both Drew and I are on Minnesota this week, for better or for worse. The rest of this slate, I will say, I think this is the worst the worst slate of football games that I've seen in a very long time. You're not missing much if you're not gambling this weekend. In terms of viewer value, I don't think there just isn't much this week in terms of the quality of these matchups, in my opinion. So Houston at Detroit will lead us off here. You got two bad teams playing against each other with two really good quarterbacks. Is it Deshaun Watson or Matthew Stafford that gets it done this week?
Deshaun Watson is really, really, really good, and I will take Houston in that game because of that. He's super, super good, and it's actually astonishing how bad Houston is everywhere else. I feel bad for Deshaun.
You have to feel bad for him because you're right. He is the backbone of that team, and he quite literally willed his team to victory last week. He have 2 rushing touchdowns and a couple passing touchdowns to beat New England, and that's knowing that Bill Belichick is scheming against you to take you out of the game because you got nothing else offensively. Yeah, Watson's a very good player. I think he's good enough to beat Detroit by himself, so I'm going to have to pick him as well. The next one here, we go to the NFC East, which this is, in theory, one of the more competitive games here just because both these teams are in it. That's Washington and Dallas, but in terms of the quality of performance, this should not be a good football game. Andy Dalton, I believe it'll be Alex Smith again this week. Who gets the better there?
I'm going to take Washington. They kind of dominated Andy Dalton last time before Dalton left the game for injury. I'll sort of pick Washington based on they seem to have Dalton figured out. Now, I kind of thought the Vikings would this past week, and they didn't, but I'll pick Washington.
So I went over with you a couple weeks ago when you have a game that's a toss-up, right, kind of how I determine toss-ups, and one of them is always coaching. Mike McCarthy or Ron Rivera. These are 2 bad teams. I'm going to take Ron Rivera because I like the way he coaches a lot more. I know that McCarthy's successful. I also don't think he's smart or innovative at the position of head coach. So I'm going to take Ron Rivera's Washington football team. They've been surprising me all season long. Chase Young keeps getting better, and Alex Smith, I thought he was going to be lucky to be a guy who goes 10 for 14 for 110 yards. He's throwing for 300 every week. He looks good.
I mean, they're throwing a lot too, but he's
even McLaurin. They're getting it done. So I'm going to take Washington as well. In my opinion, this is the best game of the week. This will fall on Thursday night, or I guess tonight. That's Baltimore at Pittsburgh. Lamar Jackson not looking great. Baltimore falling to pieces right in front of our eyes. Pittsburgh is one of the first 10-0 teams in recent memory. I believe they're the 5th team ever to do so, or something like that. And they look really good across the board. Who do you got in this one?
So I don't buy the Steelers hype. I don't think they're in that. They're not the best team in the league, in my opinion. But I think Baltimore is. They've fallen off, and I think people have figured out their offense. That offense is limited right now. I think forcing Lamar Jackson to throw from the pocket has limited the Ravens' offense quite a bit. So I'm going to take the Steelers. I think they'll shut down Lamar. It won't take more than 20 points, I don't think, to win this game. Both defenses will shine, but I think the Steelers have a little bit more on offense.
Yeah, I'm going to take Pittsburgh as well. They're just a more well-oiled machine right now. Now, that being said, I do think Mike Tomlin teams, or I guess Mike Tomlin team, because he's only been the head coach of Pittsburgh, they do seem to play down to their competition level. Every single game they play, it seems to be close, regardless of they're playing the Jets or –
Remember the Dallas game a couple weeks ago? I mean,
exactly.
It was Garrett Gilbert that almost beat him.
Right. So I think this one is more of a toss-up than I think we're giving it credit for, given this kind of the standard that
maybe take
Baltimore
Ravens
set.
plus 5.5.
Yeah, I would probably take the Ravens with the spread, but straight up, I'm taking Pittsburgh as well. Next one here. Las Vegas at Atlanta has the potential to be fun, but neither of these 2 teams are either relevant. But Derek Carr, Matt Ryan has the potential to be a shootout. Who you got in this one?
Atlanta looked really bad against the Saints, and for that reason, I'm taking Las Vegas. Las Vegas is sneaky, kind of gritty. I like them, and so yeah, the Falcons are just bad, and I hate saying that because they destroyed the Vikings. But the Raiders look competitive enough to win this one.
Yeah, I do. I think that I think Atlanta is kind of like the Vikings, where it's like some weeks you're like, wow, why isn't this team more competitive? And then
Yeah,
other
you're
weeks
right.
you're like,
That's
I
probably true.
understand. So I do think that this is a week where they look like hell, though. So I'm going to take Las Vegas as well. I think they're the safer
Back-to-back weeks where they look like hell.
pick. Next one here, we got the Los Angeles Chargers heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Competitive football game in theory. Justin Herbert's a hell of a lot of fun to watch. The Bills are coming off of bye, so they seem to be, in theory, would be more well rested. Who gets it done here? Is it Josh Allen or the rookie Herbert?
I'm going to take Josh Allen and the Bills. There's just better players on Buffalo. And the Chargers are still kind of struggling and to figure out how to win games at this point. And so they almost lost to the Jets last week. So I'm going to take Buffalo.
Yep. I'm going Buffalo as well. They're the safe pick. Los Angeles just hasn't been consistent all year. And this is where we start to really get into some fun ones here. The New York Giants against the Cincinnati Bengals. No Joe Burrow. Daniel Jones has been better. Who you got in this one?
I'll take the Giants. They're going to be 4-7, sneaking back into the NFC East. I mean, that division's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm taking the Giants just because the Bengals have Ryan Finley, I think, at quarterback.
Yeah. I'm going to take the Giants too. I think they're the safe pick. I'm not.
Imagine saying that 3 weeks ago. Oh, I'm going to take the Giants for the safe pick.
Yeah. I mean, without Joe Burrow, Cincinnati.
It's true, though. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. All right. The next one here, Tennessee and Indianapolis. That one has the potential to be some fun in the AFC South. I think I have an idea of where you're going with this one, but you want to confirm it for me?
The Titans can never beat the Colts. Like it's really unbelievable.
Really?
They never do. It's kind of strange. I'm going to pick the Colts here, and which is very against sort of my Titans fandom, I guess. And it's not really a fandom, but I just kind of really like Vrabel and the way that they do things. But they can't. It's just been it's a historical thing with the Titans. They just can't beat the Colts for whatever reason. So I am going to pick the Colts.
I'm going to take Tennessee just because you took the Colts. I was going to take whatever team you didn't, to be honest with you. So I think this is a toss-up. This is a good matchup. This is one of the few good matchups this week. So
you can say those
Tennessee.
Quarterbacks are kind of similar too. I know you like to go to that as the next the next step in your decision-making process. But Rivers and Tannehill are kind of similar there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Arizona at New England is the next one here. Cam Newton and Kyler Murray. It sounds fun on paper, but New England, man, I don't really know what kind of who they are. So who you got in this one?
Yeah, I don't know what they are either. I'm going to pick Arizona, obviously for the Vikings' sake. If you're still hoping for a playoff spot, you're really rooting for New England in this one. But I will take the Cardinals here. Yep,
I'm going to take Arizona as well. That's what I said before. It's just that's it. Like I can't pick New England confidently right now. I can feel better about what Arizona is doing because they've been pretty consistently a top 5 offense all year.
Yeah.
So
I will say once again, I will be not optimistic. I will be back in on the Vikings playoff hopes if the Vikings win and the Cardinals lose to the Patriots. I'll be like back in it, which is going to stink because I know I'm going to be let down again. But I will be back in.
I think I'm with you, but I guess we'll find out next week. This next one here is not a game that we're probably going to pick. It's Miami at the Jets. I assume we're both going Miami here.
I don't care who plays quarterback for Miami. They're beating the Jets.
But yeah, I'm with you on that as well. Cleveland at Jacksonville here, another one that probably doesn't plan to be competitive. Cleveland looks pretty good. Jacksonville looks pretty bad. Can Jacksonville get the upset?
The Browns, Kevin Stefanski is going to be 8-3 if they beat Jacksonville. And they have done it by winning ugly every week because they keep playing home games where it's like 20 degrees and a 40-mile-an-hour wind. So, but hey, credit to Stefanski. He keeps winning them.
Yep. I'm taking Cleveland as well. I mean, that's the team I'm rooting for here, right? The Vikings aren't going to make a run at the Super Bowl. I'll take the fun AFC team that never really seems to get to have any fun either. So I will take Cleveland in this one. I think they're the obvious pick here. New Orleans at Denver is the next one on here. Denver looks pretty bad. New Orleans with Taysom Hill, I mean, that was kind of interesting to watch. He was not bad at playing quarterback. He's not Steve Young like everyone keeps saying, but he definitely has the skill set to be a similar type of quarterback. Is he able to do it against a good Denver defense? What do you think?
I totally have something in my eye right now, so I'm like hardly focused. I don't even know what it is, but I'll try to get through the picks here, and then we can be done. I'm taking Denver in this game because I trust Vic Fangio to figure out Taysom Hill a little bit better. And so I'm going to take Denver, and they looked pretty good too this past week. So I'll take them over the Saints. This is really bothering me, by the way. Oh my God.
I'm going to take New Orleans. I think they're the more competent team. I liked what I saw from Taysom Hill, like I just said. I think they get it done against a not great Denver team. And because you have something in your eye, let's do rapid fire on these last four here. San Francisco at Los Angeles Rams. Who you got in that one?
Got the Rams.
Yeah, I think the Rams are the safe pick. San Francisco doesn't look good, still recovering from injury. So the Rams for both of us there. Kansas City at Tampa Bay has the potential to be a fun one. Patrick Mahomes gets to go against Tom Brady, who kind of fell apart down the stretch there.
He did.
You got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I'm picking the Chiefs every single week. I don't see a team that I'm not picking, I'm picking them every single week.
Yep, I am too. Kansas City for me as well, which brings us into our last two here. Chicago and Green Bay. Who you got in that one?
Yeah, Green Bay. The Bears need to show me they can score any points at all offensively before I'm picking them.
Absolutely. Completely agree. I will go with Green Bay as well. And then our final game, the Monday night game, which could be fun just based off the Seahawks' history on, primetime football. They got the Philadelphia Eagles this week. Who you got?
I've got Seattle because Carson Wentz looks like duty right now.
Yep.
That guy looks bad right now. And so he's probably feeling some heat with Jalen Hurts sitting behind him, by the way.
This could be the game we see Jalen Hurts.
It could be. I'm taking Russell Wilson in primetime.
Yeah, I will take Seattle as well. They're a much better football team, like definitively speaking. Up through week 11 now, Drew has a commanding 4-game lead now at 104-57 against my 161. I had the worst week of my picking history last week. This is the worst. I've never picked a worse week ever. I went 5-9. So we'll look to rebound here with the picks that we just gave you. And hopefully the Vikings will rebound as well. There's still an opportunity. It's not a good one. I don't believe in it. I don't think a lot of you guys do either. But there's an opportunity here. And like you said, if Arizona loses, which they could, and the Vikings win, which they could, we'll be right back.
Then we're right back in it, and we're going to be discussing playoff scenarios and all that again, and it's going to be dumb.
It's been a roller coaster of a season, and I think that roller coaster is going to continue for probably into December. So we'll be back to discuss more of that next week. I hope you guys all have a great Thanksgiving holiday. Enjoy your food, or depending on what you're doing, enjoy your family as well if you're able to do so. And thank you for listening. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, or any place else you find your podcasts. Make sure to check us out on YouTube and the Daily Norseman as well if you'd like to leave a comment. We love reading through those. That's always a lot of fun for us. And finally, make sure to check out the rest of the Climbing the Pocket team. We're producing content Monday through Friday every day. Should be new stuff that's available to you to check out. And so do that. I encourage you to do so. The guys on our team are creating a bunch of good stuff. So thank you for listening. Have a great holiday, and we will catch you guys next week.